Well, you've probably been hearing a lot about the Murdaugh trial. And even if you have not, well, it's a most interesting mystery. A mystery not without victims. Hey, we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this edition of Charlie Crimebuster. Hey, it's what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting.
Expressed in this podcast are those solely of individuals interviewed and participating in this show and do not represent those of Peacemaker Network and Charlie Crimebuster. All individuals described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another Charlie Crimebuster podcast. We're delighted to have you on board today. We appreciate all the new listeners. We get them every single week and the thousands of downloads. Well, we're humbled by it and we appreciate that. Hey, if you have not yet subscribed, be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform. If you get a chance, leave us a review, if you will. We hope it's a 5-star review if you enjoy the podcast. Also, if you'd like to support the program, we'll go over to peacemakernetwork.com, peacemakernetwork.com. There you become what we call a badge supporter, B-A-D-G-E. For as little as $3 a month, you can be a part of the program of us helping the men and women that are heroes in our country. That is law enforcement, first responders, and the military. You can read all about how we support those and how you can be a part of supporting those by going to peacemakernetwork.com. And, of course, you can always get caught up on Charlie Crimebuster episodes by going to charliecrimebuster.com or, again, peacemakernetwork.com. Hey, all of those links, we're going to leave them in the show notes. So all you got to do is just click on it. Just click on it. You'll be right there. You can read all about some of the support work we're doing. Hey, also, I'd like to encourage you to reach out with a shout-out. If you'd like to reach me, just email me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. You can share suggestions, you can ask questions, you can even differ with our opinion, and you can express your difference with our opinion. It is a safe place for you to do so. We welcome your contact, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Well, my friend, we're about to embark on a mystery that will literally cause your head to spin. That's because of all the crazy different sides to this particular mystery. But before we do that, let's start out with what we call our Crazy Crook story. We share those every week. Well, this one has to do with a set of lowlifes. Yep, those lowlifes that spend their time breaking into other people's property. And there they take things that do not belong to them. So they break into property that does not belong to them, and they take things that do not belong to them. Well, this group of scumbags, they broke into a house in Silver Springs, Florida. Well, they thought for sure, they thought they had found the mother lode. Now, you find all kinds of things that people take from houses. They take jewelry, they take guns. So, by the way, my friend, if you are a concealed carry person, be careful about that gun. Be careful where you leave it. Leave it in your car, it's likely to be stolen. That's one of the most popular things taken out of people's cars. Well, this particular group, they found what they thought was a load of cocaine, jars of it, you see, my friend. They broke into that house in Silver Springs, Florida. They thought for sure they had found the mother lode. They found a whole bunch of what they thought was cocaine. Cocaine they could use for themselves. Cocaine they could sell to get real money. Everything they could imagine as a successful heist. That was until they finally realized after snorting it several times, they realized the jars of cocaine that they had been snorting, well, it was actually the ashes. Yep, the ashes of a loving husband and his 2 dogs. That was the so-called, quote, cocaine they were snorting. So, my friend, these crazy crooks who are ingesting or snorting, I should say, the ashes of a human being and 2 dogs. That, my friend, is Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. You see, before we get into this mystery, we want to give you a quick update on the case regarding the tragic death of Tyre Nichols. Now, last week I told you, while I'm extremely proud of the brave men and women of law enforcement, well, I am exceptionally ashamed of the actions of 5 Memphis police officers who were fired and charged with the murder of Tyre Nichols. Tyre did not deserve to die, period, and especially he did not deserve to die at the hand of the men who were supposed to serve and protect. Well, my friend, now it appears that these 5 bullies with a badge that we called last week, well, we learned that they were not alone in the blame. 2 more Memphis police officers have been disciplined, and 3 emergency responders fired in connection with the death of Tyre Nichols. That's what officials said last Monday, which widened the circle of punishment for the shocking display of police brutality. You see, that was after video showed that many more people failed to help him, many more beyond the 5 officers accused of beating him to death. This one is Officer Preston Hemphill. By the way, the other 5 bullies with a badge, they were black. This guy is white. And he was relieved of duty shortly after Nicholas' January the 7th arrest. That's what the police department announced. Later in the day, it said another officer had been relieved, but without naming the person or specifying what role he played in the incident. Now, if you missed last week's podcast, you might want to go back and pick up that one. It was our podcast on Tyre Nichols and 5 bullies with a badge. You can pick that up by going to your podcast platform where you grab this episode. Or you can go to charliecrimebuster.com, click on episodes. So, now let's get to our focus of this week. You see, much of the news this week has covered the ongoing trial of Alex Murdaugh. So who is Alex Murdaugh? Well, he's the husband of Maggie Murdaugh, 52 years of age, and their 22-year-old son Paul, who, tragically, were found dead in their family home on June the 7th in 2021. Now, Murdaugh, he was the 8th of a long line of prosecutors dating all the way back to the very first elected official over 100 years ago. But, my friend, everything changed on that June the 7th when a 911 call was made at 10:07 p.m. There, Murdaugh called to report that his wife and son had been fatally shot. Now, authorities, they did find shell casings at the scene. They said Maggie and Paul had been shot several times. They did not and have not yet found a weapon. Now, according to a timeline of events, Murdaugh, he called the police dispatcher. He told them he had arrived home, only to find the lifeless bodies of his son and wife. However, now, that same man who made that 911 call, that man who had followed a tradition of prosecutors there in southern South Carolina, well, he's on trial now for the double murder of his wife and son. But, my friend, there's a whole lot more. In fact, a ton more about this case. And it involves more people. And that makes this case a tangle of webs and deceit and crime. But the question is, who is guilty and who is really innocent in this case? Well, my friend, while the murder mystery is intriguing, I just do not know if I've ever heard of a murder case with this many different charges. Now get this. Murdaugh now, of course, he's suspended from practicing law, and he now faces, get this, not one, but 74 criminal charges. That's right, I said 74. Of those charges, my friends, 71 are financial crimes from the grand jury indictments. 3 are an additional Colleton County charge stemming from, get this, quote unquote, a murder for hire suicide. This is in addition to his wife and son being found dead. Now, the new indictments, they're for alleged schemes to defraud clients whom he had represented as attorney. Now, get this. It has been reported that if all these charges, if they ran consequently, if they all ran together one after the other, well, my friend, hold on to your hat. He could face more than 731 years behind bars. And most of those are not even counting this murder charge, double murder charge he's facing now. Well, as in most cases, you see, the best way to get a hand on a case is to develop a timeline of events leading up unto the trial. But unfortunately, my friend, this timeline, if we were to go through each event, well, I guarantee you two things would happen. Number one, we would have produced our longest podcast ever. Hey, don't turn off. We're not going to do that. And number two, you would fall asleep, or you'd get so bored you would say, enough! So, just as we often do for you at Charlie Crimebuster, let's cut to the chase. Let's do a Dragnet. Remember the old show Dragnet? Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. Well, here is what is interesting about the case. First, this is a successful Southern family that fell from a prominent position there in beautiful South Carolina, the southern part of South Carolina. Oh, they had prestige, and they were the driving force behind putting bad guys away at one time, this heritage of this particular family. That is, until he became the bad guy, at least alleged bad guy, particularly by the actions of Alex Murdaugh. And as in many murder mysteries, it was financial pressure. Financial pressure upon Alex, well, it probably led to desperation. And when you're desperate, when there's desperation, well, as I've often said, desperate people do desperate things. You see, this is what the judge learned about this case on this past Thursday. Now, Murdaugh, he was over $4 million in debt, and he was overdrawn at the bank. And all of this, well, it was closing in on him like a freight train in a tunnel. And now prosecutors, well, they're trying to get this financial mess into the murder trial. So on Thursday, this past Thursday, there was a showdown over evidence for the motive of the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh, accusing him of killing his wife and son way back in June 2021. And so, at the court, the defense and the prosecution, well, they battled over whether the jury would even be able to hear evidence related to Murdaugh's alleged financial crimes. You see, when Murdaugh's defense attorney, Jim Griffin, well, he asked Paul Murdaugh's friend, his friend Will Loving, he asked him under cross-examination on Wednesday of this past week, he asked him if he could think of any reasons why Alex would kill his wife and his son. You see, it appears that he was attempting to use a character argument that was to try to discount the charges against this disbarred Low County lawyer. That's according to presiding Judge Clifton Newman. And my friend, that question that his defense attorneys asked, well, that could be a huge mistake. You see, because now, when Griffin brought up the character of his client when cross-examining Will Loving, well, the lead prosecutor, Mr. Waters, he now thinks that he's permitted to launch into a series of questions about Alex's alleged financial crimes in front of the jury. You see, prior to this, they weren't allowed to bring in any of these financial crimes in this murder trial. Well, the defense, they objected Wednesday. But Newman, he overruled that objection. Newman, the judge said, it's up to the prosecution and defense about how to proceed, or he would intervene now. You see, prior to that moment, this jury had heard nothing about the financial crimes. I guess that's except in the opening statements there. Waters, well, he He described, quote, unquote, a gathering storm of legal problems, including alleged financial misdeeds that Alex was facing on the night of June the 7th, 2021. He's alleging this as a possible motive for murder. Well, so now the judge sends out the jury, you see, because now they got to figure out whether they're going to allow this into the courtroom. And so now there's a separate hearing without the jury present, centering on those alleged misdeeds. And so they call someone to the stand, Jeannie Seckinger. She's called to the stand. You see, she's an accountant. She's the bookkeeper. And she's the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, at the law firms, the very same law firm that bore the Murdaugh family name. Now, she testified that she had known Murdaugh for over 40 years, that she worked at the firm for 20 years. But, my friend, I'm telling you, she didn't hold it back. She didn't mince any words in her testimony. She said right out that Alex stole and misappropriated millions of dollars in funds. She testified in great detail how Alex managed to steal nearly $3 million in 6 years from clients. She talked about an elaborate scheme from 2015 to 2021. And listen to this. On June 10th, just 3 days after the murders of his son and wife, well, there was a hearing where Murdaugh would have to disclose all of his accounts. That hearing was looming right there. And so now you see the prosecution alleges that Alex murdered Maggie and Paul, well, because he was just trying to buy time. He was just diverting scrutiny from those schemes, making it appear, making it appear that he and his family, they are being victimized to cast light off of his own financial misdeeds. And if that was the motive, well, I'd have to say if it was, it's alleged, well, it worked. You see, after the murder of his son and wife, the people there at the firm, they did not press Murdaugh on the money issues. In fact, the CFO went on to testify under oath, quote, she said Alex was distraught and upset, and not in the office, much and nobody wanted to harass him about nothing that we thought was really missing. She went on to say, we had several months until the end of the year to clear it up, so we were not going to harass him at the time. After all, his son and his wife had been murdered. Now, of course, the jury, they're claiming that this should come into the trial, and the defense is claiming that it should not come into the trial. And so, you see, with the financial heat off, it appears that now, get this, he comes up with even another incredible plan. Now, the defense, of course, argued the testimony is not relevant to the facts of the case. They said it could cause unnecessary things in the trial. You see, as Waters just described all the financial misdeeds and crimes that he wants to prove up, they said, well, if we go through all that, we're going to be here to the end of February and beyond March, because it's going to add weeks to the trial. Well, the judge, he did appear to be receptive to allowing at least some of the financial evidence to be admitted before the jury. However, there was no final determination made. But, my friend, I got to say this all raises concerns about how deep and wide this trial could extend. You see, there's much more to the case, but the bottom line in this case is that, is this the motive for Murdaugh killing his wife and son? Did he actually kill his wife and son just to distract people from the financial crimes? Do you buy that? Do you think that was the motive? Well, my friend, I got to tell you, hang on to your seatbelt. Something else happened along that same time. And again, it had to do with finances. You see, my friend, just 3 months after his wife's and son murder, well, Murdaugh, he was injured, actually shot, in a roadside shooting in Hampton County. Now, his lawyer and friend Jim Griffin, he told the news outlets that Murdaugh's black Mercedes-Benz SUV that he had a flat tire. He pulled his vehicle over, and when he did, a pickup truck passed by, turned around, and the person inside it opened up fire. Now, they went on to say that his injury at that time was a superficial head wound. He had been flown to the Memorial Health University Medical Center in Savannah, Georgia, for treatment. However, once again, the way things appeared, it was deceptive, and deception appears to be an MO for this defendant. Because what? Well, now, my friend, we know that shooting, the shooting after the death of his son and his wife, well, that shooting was a setup. You see, they found the man who allegedly shot Murdaugh, and according to authorities, Murdaugh hired this man to shoot him. Murdaugh did that because that his own son could then collect, his other son that is, almost $10 million in life insurance. And the South Carolina man who authorities said shot Murdaugh in the alleged suicide for hire scheme, well, on 48 Hours on CBS, he said, "No, I'm innocent." His name was Curtis Smith, 61 years of age. And he said the only thing he was guilty of was trusting too much. You see, Murdaugh and his legal team, well, they claimed that Smith shot Murdaugh in the head on the roadway on September the 4th. Murdaugh, he had told authorities that he did conspire with Smith, who was a former client. He conspired of him as part of a fraud scheme so that his only surviving son could collect $10 million in the life insurance payouts. You see, Murdaugh's attorneys, they accused Smith of taking advantage of Murdaugh's mental illness and that he was addicted, Murdaugh that is, addicted to drugs. But Smith now, he tells CBS that Murdaugh called him on September the 4th saying he needed help. He said he considered Murdaugh like a brother. He did not think twice about meeting him on a rural country road. And he went on to say that Smith followed Murdaugh to the road and that he shot Murdaugh as he stood in the roadway. That's what the probable cause affidavit said. But Smith, he said that it was a different story. He said Murdaugh emerged from the car with a weapon. He said, "Yeah, you got to take care of this." And I said, "I can't do it." And he turned his head and I grabbed his arm to put it behind his head and to take the gun from him. And then he said, while I was trying to get that gun from him, well, the gun went off. He said, I got rid of the weapon. He said he wanted me to kill him, but that wasn't happening. Smith then said he felt mad, scared, all at the same time, and he drove away. So here we have Murdaugh saying that he hired Smith to try to get Smith to shoot him so that his son could get the insurance. And Smith said, "No, that wouldn't happen at all. He called me out there. I'm his friend. I came out there, but I didn't want to shoot him. I tried to get rid of the gun." Well, so this mystery intensifies after the deaths of his wife and his son. And who knows what really happened out there, but we do know one thing, that he is guilty of deceit. Regardless of what really happened, deception seems to be a part of this man's life. Now, of course, there are those who show that even this shows unconscious guilt about the murder. It shows that he was trying to commit suicide, try to have it appear that he was murdered. This way he could, well, number one, he could avoid the charges coming his way. Number two, perhaps convince others he did not shoot his wife and his son and that he was a victim just like them. And three, appear to be a hero by at least leaving his son millions of dollars in insurance. But again, what really stands out here is deceit. He was again attempting to deceive authorities. Seems to be very much a part of his MO. You see, my friend, deception happened before and after the deaths of his son and his wife. But the question is, my friend, did Murdaugh kill his wife and his son and try to deceive authorities? Would he go that far just to get the financial wolves that were tracking him down because of financial crimes? Would he go to the point that he would kill his wife and his son just to get people to feel sorry for him, just to treat him as a victim instead of a financial criminal? Did that really happen? Well, my friend, that's going to be a big part of this crime. And next week, we might even tell you a little more about the death of another person that was connected to this story. But before we leave, we have to share with you what we call our Courageous Citizen of the Week. Well, thankfully, there was a heroic citizen with a permit to legally carry a concealed handgun. Well, he was able to save countless of lives here in the state of Florida some time back when he shot a gunman who opened fire on a back-to-school event that was attended by over 150 students at a park over here in Titusville, Florida. You see, the media rarely gives national news coverage to incidents like this, but responsible gun owners, well, here in Florida, they've stopped many times before. They've stopped people, and they've saved lives. Well, in fact, concealed handgun permit holders, well, they've prevented dozens of mass public shootings just in recent years, but they only receive brief mentions in local news coverage. Well, fortunately there in Titusville, only the attacker, only the man with a gun who was stopped by a good man with a gun, he was the only one injured. The gun permit holder, well, he shot him in the head to keep the attacker from shooting any other children and adults in the park. Now, neither the permit holder nor the attacker were identified right after it. But here is the presence of an armed good guy who prevented the Titusville shooting. And that, my friend, is our Courageous Citizen of the Week. You see, law enforcement officers can't be everywhere. So the presence of armed citizens, well, it can be vital to protect an instant response to attackers. And let me follow up on that a little bit. The Titusville Police Sergeant William Amos said, this person stepped in and saved a lot of people's lives. The police, they did respond within minutes, but the gun permit holder, he was right there at the moment the attack started. That enabled him to stop the attacker almost immediately. Sergeant went on to say law enforcement can't be everywhere, so this did save lives. And with over 1.7 million concealed handgun permit holders, well, Florida sees more than its share of defensive gun uses. And a number of those we've shared in our podcasts. Well, while a good man with a gun saved lives, well, in this story today, our focus today, we're talking about an alleged bad man with a gun. A gun that authorities, well, they've not yet found it, my friend. But now, they are trying to place that in the hand of a not-so-good man. All that started way back, even before the murders. This bad man's deed started in 2018. And then we're going to tell you next week about the death of another person in the house who died in another mysterious way. We'll share that next week. All right, before we leave today, there are some lessons, and we're going to keep up with this trial. This man is now on trial for double murder. We're going to tell you all about that trial next week, get you caught up on that. But what say ye? Is this man, it appears he is guilty of financial fraud, but does that mean he's guilty of murder? That's the real core of the case. And we're going to watch it while the prosecution and the defense slug it out in trial. By the way, his attorneys are good, especially on cross-examination, but are they good enough to get him out of these charges? We're going to see all about that. We will keep you up on the case. Before we leave quickly, there are some lessons to learn. We need to remember, my friend, that more important than money is family. Here, a family dynasty is destroyed by financial fraud and eventually alleged murder. And as we've been saying, a lot of these true crime stories, if it teaches you anything, it teaches you to love the people in your life. Victims' families can all tell you not to take for granted the people you love. Someone told me just this week, someone asked her, why do you and your family members always say I love you over and over again? Especially when one family member leaves to go to work, to school, or whatever. Well, her answer was this: you never know when it might be the last words your family ever hears. So, my friend, in a world where true crime reveals our evil, let's fill our world with love. And if not love, at least respect. Respect the lives of those around you. Treat everyone the way you would like to be treated if you were in their shoes. If that sounds like the golden rule, you're right. Jesus himself said, treat your neighbor as yourself. Pretty good words to live by, right? Well, so until this time next time, if you do respect yourself, if you do respect your neighbor, well, my friend, that respect should include protection. So until this time next time, Charlie Crimebuster here reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. For the life you save, yep, it may be your very own.